what we'll do is we'll pose this question to the other four speakers. Since COVID, there has been a lot of uncertainty, and we keep having very frequent changes, and there's very unfavorable conditions, and so how will religion help us to, cope with the different measures, the changing conditions, as well as keep us resilient during COVID? Maybe we can start off with, we'll start since he finished last, and then we'll go on to the other speakers.
Sorry, what was the question?
How does religion help us to stay resilient and cope with the changing landscapes of COVID?
So I guess being religiously inclined, what has been the guidance of God the Almighty to be submitting yourself to whatever that God has willed upon, and there is this pro action or pro understanding of who we are as human and how we can react to certain things that help around us, and being strong enough to encourage our fellow followers to react or help each other. That itself is an act of resilience. I'm very happy to hear from Brother Derek just now on Francis and how touch make a different or another scope of understanding, I would say. I mean at this present moment, we do not want to be touched, or we do not like to touch the other. In fact, we have to refrain from, being Muslim, we shake our hands and so on. So having to understand the both aspect of sharing love and touching people, and those are the kind of moments that I think need to be understood clearly by the religious perspective to make an understanding of how we impart love and being strong in times like this. Yeah.
It was very nice for you to say, you're touched by what Friar Derek said. So maybe Friar Derek, you can continue from what he said about what you think, how you think religion can keep us resilient.
Thanks, Faima and Ustaz, and thanks for your questions. And I just want to quote Jesus saying that in Matthew, that today has got enough trouble of its own. And we have got so many worries of what to wear, who to go out with. Okay, Jesus never said who to go out with, but we just got so many things happening in our minds that we're always distracted. And so I think this is a time that we come back to the heart and to ask, what do we really want? Not just what do we really want, but what does God want of us? And I think, what do we desire? Are our desires the same as God desires for us? And what is that? And which is why, just following this line, today has enough trouble of its own. What the Lord says is, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then everything else will fall in place. I think once our hearts are in the right place, everything else will follow, because God is a God of providence, and His grace is always enough, and we have heard of that, and that's why we can place our trust, and that's why we need faith. And it only then that we can stop being so self-focused and just keep looking within. Not to say that we don't. That's why I think the balance is key, where we got the vertical component to God, that internal component with self, and then the horizontal component with everyone else. That's why sometimes we Franciscans, we talk about contemplation and compassion, where the more we have, we like to use the word ecstasy. That means we come out of ourself. That's what it means in Greek, ecstasis, to come out of the self. When we come out of ourself to relate, to connect with God in contemplation, somehow it leads us to also be aesthetic in horizontally to our neighbor. And so contemplation and compassion always go together. So when we seek God, everything else would be fine.
Thank you so much. Reverend Terry K, what do you think?
Continuing with Derek's example about, the first thing first, it's like buttoning a shirt. If you have your first button correct, the chances of the other buttons that follow will be correct. But if your first button is wrong, no matter how you button, it will never be correct. All right, that's the first thing. But buttoning the first button itself doesn't mean you are fully buttoned up. All right, there are other things to follow. And so starting with have our alignment and faith in God correct. And then with that, we align our life, our responsibility in caring for ourselves and for others. And in this case, all right, protecting yourself is also protecting others. All right. And yet at the same time, all right, be aware that we are here on earth, not just for ourselves. All right. And even as I say, even if we die doing that which is correct, we can die in peace. All right. Knowing that, when we meet our Creator, all right, we have died by God doing the thing that is by God the expected of us. All right. And so there's this balance, and sometimes, people of faith are being accused of what you call not living according to science. All right. And it's not faith or science. All right. It's faith and science. All right. And both of these goes together. And as what was mentioned earlier, now the pandemic and the challenge before us is COVID. We do not know what is tomorrow. But if we have this perspective correct, and we face and we face the challenges of tomorrow as when it comes, all right, as we are facing it today, we should be all right. All right, but don't worry about tomorrow before tomorrow comes. All right. We do not know what tomorrow holds, but we know who holds tomorrow. And so with that, we just live our life and without being overly anxious about what is not here yet.
Thank you. Dr. Kwek, before you answer the first question on how religion can, I think one of the other questions that came was also whether the current pandemic is a karmic, effect of our previous wrongdoing. And, maybe you can share what you think. Then we'll bring in the other speakers to see also what they think about this.
Which question?
So the first question is, how does religion help us to stay resilient with
Okay.
everything?
All right, so I'll answer that one first.
Yeah, first, yeah.
Okay. So the Buddha often look at things from the perspective of the mind itself. So given the mind, the state of the mind now with COVID and with this called causes and condition, I think as you mentioned, each time there are new directives, there are new news about figures going up. I think one can expect in what we call an untrained mind, anxiety, fear, anger, worry. These are what we call unwholesome mental states. Now, the way to handle unwholesome mental states, the Buddha taught, was to replace it with wholesome states. So as I mentioned just now, the three wholesome states that we can practice will be generosity. That means radiating. We have this practice called meditation, where we radiate loving kindness to all sentient beings. So we have two kinds of meditation. One is wishing all beings be well and happy. And the other one is may all beings be free from pain and suffering. So this is what we call the sort of the two-edged practice we do. So that is the mental state we can do. So having looked after the mental state, then the next one, we put this into action. So when you have the mental state and the action together in sync, then the mind becomes occupied. It's not something that I think the anxiety can disappear overnight or next second. But the mind, this is a state of mind. Just as it acquires the state of fear, either through evolution or environment, we also have to gradually take that up. So by practicing these wholesome states, like I think all the speakers have agreed, with love, with compassion, because in our understanding, the mind can only be occupied with only one sensation. You cannot have fear and love together, cannot. It is either fear or love, hatred or love, generosity or hatred, one only. So having understood this, then we must infuse this mind. So that's why Buddhists, we practice meditation. We spend about 15 minutes. It depends on the time, like in the morning, radiating loving kindness to all sentient beings. So not only to human, but we radiate to all the beings. And then after that, then you preoccupy yourself with wholesome actions, like I mentioned just now, getting yourself involved in community work to help to reach out to as many people as you can. Our people who look after us, the frontliners, even in where we live, our work, the people who clean our places, everywhere. I mean, wherever you can see, in our workplace, our families, our friends, our strangers. So I think we do this two-pronged attack. I call it an attack. And then anything that comes, the mind is protected. That's how a Buddhist will approach. So we protect the mind, or sometimes we say we protect the heart. So in Buddhism, the heart and the mind is the same. Because of the translation from India, the original word was mind, but of course, when it came to China and the Far East, this word mind was translated into heart. So these are the same. So we always say protect the good heart, nourish the good heart or the good mind with wholesome qualities. And anything can come, any vicissitudes of life can come your way, because that thing you cannot change. We are always taught by the Buddha that what happens outside cannot change. You cannot change how the ocean currents would turn, how the sun, all that, you can't do anything. But you can change what we call the internal world. The internal world is this heart. So we practice this, train our heart, nourish the heart, strengthen the heart or the mind with wholesome qualities. Whatever comes, you'll be able to handle it. So I think that's the first question, right? Okay. The next question, I think, is about this karmic, sort of a karmic thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think from the Buddhist perspective, the law of karma is not something anybody can explain fully, except a fully enlightened person. I can only say, yes, it could be. It could be. That's all I'm qualified to say, because I'm not fully enlightened. A fully enlightened being can see, we say, the many multitude of factors. This is called cause and condition. Yes, it may have a role to play, but whatever it is, as the Buddha always said, the final thing is how we react to it. What happens, we cannot change. This is in the past, but what we do now, that one we can change. So that's why I was saying that we must have another pandemic, a good pandemic. A pandemic where all religions, all communities, all come together. And then we can overwhelm this pandemic of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Koi. If any of the speakers want to also, perhaps from the different other religions, this idea of whether this is like, there was also, I think we'll start with, there was this thing about whether this is a punishment, whether the pandemic is a punishment for us. What would you think about this? Is there anything that we can sort of reconcile with this idea of why the pandemic is happening and how we should take it as religious people?
Okay, maybe I can just mention that in the gospel it was mentioned once that when Jesus was with the disciples and there was a man born blind, and then the disciples asked Jesus, whose sin is it? Was it his sin or his parents' sin that he was born blind? All right, and that's how he tends to think. Was he sin in his past life? That's why he's blind today. Or whose sin is it? His sin or his parents' sin? And Jesus' reply was, it was not his sin or his parents' sin, but then he turned the thing around. He said he was blind so that he can experience in a way the glory of God. And then Jesus healed him of his blindness. So as a result of the blindness and the healing of Jesus, he was able to experience Jesus in a very personal and special way. All right. And if you want to point as to whose sin is it that we have disease, sickness, and all those things, maybe you can point all the way back to Adam, because when he sinned, the world become imperfect, and then sickness and sin, all this evil, all this come in. All right, but it's hard to pinpoint whether is this a punishment for you, or is this a punishment for your nation, or is this a punishment for the world? All right, we are not in a position to do that. Only God can answer that, I guess. And however, in the midst of all of this, in the midst of all this so-called evil, what good can come out of it? All right, and we know that God is also able to use what you call perceived evil or bad circumstances bring forth good. And I think one of the things, for example, last year, what had happened in the dormitories and what had happened in Singapore as a whole or around the world, while on one hand, it kind of brings forth fear and anxieties, but on the other hand, it brings out the good in many people. All right. Many people begin to give, many people begin to volunteer, many people begin to see in what way they can to be part of the solution. And so this seemingly evil thing, all right, is also an opportunity for us to rise up above this evil, all right, and in doing good, in reaching out, in caring for others, all right, that we are able now to love and to be loved, all right, and to bring forth something within our community, which without such a pandemic, we may not have the opportunity to experience. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you, Reverend Terry. Any other speakers want to contribute to this question on maybe how you think that the pandemic has, really changed and transformed to a more positivity despite all the ailments? Ustad, would you like to give your opinion on that?
I can totally agree with Rev, whatever that he mentioned just now. I think it goes along with what we believe strongly about. And I think, if you look at positivity from what we have learned in the Muslim community itself, definitely there is a lot to learn. I mean, we are learning every day and accepting and having to reflect back upon how God says that. Yeah, I would say the variant of, not the pandemic now, the variant of why this is something that is understood as a torment from God or punishment or it's just merely from the parent lineage, or there are varieties of it, and we cannot put anything. And that is not the reason for us to really go on to do a research on this, because definitely there are more to move on in life and how we can accept that. So as I mentioned in my slides, that God has already mentioned that this is going to be happening. And there goes with Lot. There goes with, I'm looking at Prophet Lot here. I'm looking at Abraham. I'm looking at all those, they are put on trials. They are put on to a lot of, but what comes out of this is patience and how we handle it with wisdom and moving on to seek the positive learning point from all the happenings daily. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. I've been alerted on time, so I would love to ask some more questions. There's a lot coming in, but in view of time, we will just wrap it up. So why are we facing this? I think as Reverend Terry, we can go back all the way to the time the world started or why we're doing it. But is that a burden we want to put ourselves on? Instead, we have the power, we have the teachings, we have the wisdom from different traditions that have told us to transform into positivity. And, we have been given the opportunity to be better people. And why not just be that? And, and what is the beautiful thing about Singapore? You can learn about being better people, not just from your own religion, but from different religions. And I think that's what today's event showed. And the YouTube recording will be available in LifePoint's YouTube. So please go ahead and listen again. Quite a lot of good things that I said are worth listening to again and again. So it's been such an honor to share this space with Ustad Ali, Reverend Terry Key, Friar Derek Ba, Dr. Quay, and of course my friend Master Benjamin.